Hi, I'm Meg, and I'm going to show you how to make my Raspberry Swirl cheesecake. The first step in making this cheesecake is to make your graham cracker crust. Here I have a stick of unsalted butter that I've melted. I'm going to add this to my graham cracker crumbs. I'm just going to mix this together. And I know this is going to seem like a lot of crumb, but believe me, it's the perfect amount. The crust is going to come up the sides and it's going to give the cheesecake a really nice presentation. And once this is all combined, I'm going to give my pan a quick little spray. And you just want to press it in with your hand. Make sure you go evenly around the whole thing. And once you get that all in there, this is going to bake at 350 degrees for exactly 10 minutes, and it's going to be perfectly golden. Now I have my crust set aside to cool, and the next step in the cheesecake is the raspberry puree. I have 3/4 of a cup of raspberry puree, and if you can't find puree, just either get fresh raspberries or frozen raspberries, throw them in the blender, and strain them. To my puree, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. And the reason I do this step before I even make the cheesecake is I want to give the cornstarch and the puree time to, get to know each other, because while this is setting aside, the cornstarch is actually going to thicken the puree, and that's exactly what I want. So just mix this until you have no lumps, and then set it aside and let it do its thing. The next step is to make the cheesecake itself. In the mixer, I have 24 ounces of cream cheese. The most important thing when you're making a cheesecake is to make sure your cream cheese is at room temp. I take mine out the night before. This way I don't even have to think about it. To this, I'm going to add 1 1/3 cups of granulated sugar. The next step is to add in 1/4 cup of cornstarch. This is going to thicken up our cheesecake really nicely. Once this is all incorporated, I'm going to start adding my 2 eggs. Really important when you're making a cheesecake that after you add the eggs, you don't beat it on a high speed, because that's going to incorporate a lot of air, and that's actually what causes your cheesecake to crack when it's baking. Now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of vanilla bean paste. If you don't have paste, you can either use half of a vanilla bean or a tablespoon of vanilla extract, whatever you have on hand. Now I'm just going to give my bowl a good scrape down. Now that this is all fully incorporated, I'm going to pop this off the mixer. Don't want to waste any of this really good cheesecake batter. And for the last step, I'm actually just going to stir in 1/2 cup of heavy cream. I always add heavy cream to my cheesecakes because, well, when you have cream cheese and sugar, the only thing that can really make it any better is to add more cream. And that's it. And once this is all mixed in, I'm just going to pour it into our prepared crust. To prepare my pan, I'm actually going to wrap it in plastic wrap and then aluminum foil. I used to always just use aluminum foil, but I found that every time I did that, I'd always get water in my cheesecake. Plastic wrap is the secret trick. You will never get water in your cheesecake again. Now that I have my pan wrapped, I'm going to start pouring my cheesecake batter in. I'm going to pour about half the cheesecake batter in first. Now, being a girl from the Bronx, I've eaten a lot of cheesecake, and I can guarantee you this recipe is fabulous. So I've gotten half the batter in. I'm going to start spooning in about half of my puree. And it doesn't hurt that it's pink. And with a toothpick, I'm just going to swirl the puree in. Now I'm going to go ahead and pour the rest of my batter in. Top it off with the rest of my puree. And at this point, when you're swirling the puree, you know this cheesecake is just going to taste awesome because it already looks beautiful and it's not even baked yet. And now that that's all swirled, I'm going to bake this in a water bath. And all that means is I'm going to place this in a roasting pan. And I'm going to fill the roasting pan halfway with hot water. I'm going to bake it at 350 degrees for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes until it's completely set and it'll get a beautiful golden color on top. When I removed my cheesecake from the oven, I let it sit in the water bath for a few minutes until it was cool to the touch. Then I moved it to the counter and I let it come to room temp for about 2 hours and I refrigerated it overnight. To serve it, I just have it on a lovely platter here and I'm going to garnish it with some fresh raspberries. And I just kind of toss them around just to add another pop of color to it. And a few around the plate, doesn't hurt. And that's it. I hope you enjoy.